Admiral Kim felt his hands shake as the alien message ended. The bridge of Orbital Defense Station Alpha had gone completely silent. Everyone stared at the main screen where the foreign words still glowed in perfect Korean, English, and dozens of other Earth languages. Surrender in 72 hours or we will destroy your entire species. The message was that simple, that terrifying. Lieutenant Park broke the silence first. His voice cracked as he spoke. Sir, we're getting emergency. Calls from Seoul, Washington, London. Every major city on Earth. They all want to know what we're going to do. Kim walked slowly to the observation window. Out there, beyond the red planet Mars, sat the largest fleet of ships anyone had ever seen. They stretched across space like a metal wall blocking out the stars. Each ship was bigger than Earth's biggest. Cities. There were thousands of them. For years, humans had looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone in the universe. Scientists had searched for radio signals. Movies had been made about first contact with aliens. Everyone had imagined what it would be like to meet beings from another world. Now they knew. The aliens had come not as friends, but as conquerors. The communication system buzzed to life. President Lee's familiar voice came through from the presidential palace in Seoul. Even through the static, Kim could hear the worry in his leader's voice. Admiral Kim, what's your honest assessment of our situation? Kim studied the enemy formation through his binoculars. The alien ships moved in perfect patterns, like they had done this many times before. Their weapons were already pointed toward Gi. Earth. These weren't explorers or diplomats. These were professional soldiers who had clearly conquered other worlds. Mr. President, Kim said slowly, choosing his words carefully, they're expecting us to give up without even trying to fight. They think we'll just roll over and accept slavery because their ships are bigger than ours. He paused, watching one of the massive alien vessels drift closer to Mars. Its hull was covered in weapons that could probably destroy entire continents. But they've made one critical mistake, sir. They don't understand what it means to be human. They don't know that we've never backed down from a fight when our freedom was at stake. They're about to get a very painful education. President Lee was quiet for a long moment. Admiral, are you saying what I think you're saying? Kim turned away from the window and looked at his crew. Young men and women who had signed up to defend Earth from asteroids and space debris. Now they were humanity's first line of defense against an alien invasion. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw determination. Yes, Mr. President, we're going to fight, and we're going to show these aliens that humanity doesn't kneel to anyone. Admiral Kim stood before the largest communication array humanity had ever built. Every radio telescope, every satellite, every transmission station on Earth was linked together for this single moment. His message would reach not just the alien fleet, but every corner of the galaxy. He took a deep breath and pressed the transmission button. This is Admiral Kim of the Earth Defense Forces, speaking for all of humanity. We have received your ultimatum. We have considered your demands, and here is our answer. His voice grew stronger with each word. Humanity does not kneel. We will not surrender. We will not become your slaves. If you want our world, you'll have to take it from us. The message traveled through space at the speed of light, reaching the alien command ship in minutes. Overlord Vex stared at his communication screen in complete bewilderment. The tall, insectoid alien had conquered 847 different worlds across the galaxy. Every single species had surrendered when they saw his fleet. Some begged for mercy, others offered tribute. A few tried to negotiate terms, but none had ever simply said no. Commander, one of his officers clicked in their native language. Perhaps the translation was incorrect. Vex replayed the human message 3 times. The translation was perfect. These strange bipedal creatures were actually refusing to surrender to the mighty hegemony. Impossible, Vex muttered. They must be bluffing. Their primitive weapons cannot threaten our ships. He turned to his tactical officer. Begin the demonstration. Attack their outer colonies first. When they see their settlements burning, they will remember their place in the natural order. But as the hegemony war fleets moved toward humanity's outer colonies, something unexpected was happening across the solar system. At Ceres Station, Mining Chief Han was staring at the massive ore processing machines that had been digging up asteroids for decades. These machines could crack apart rocks the size of mountains and shoot metal at incredible speeds. "You know what?" Han said to his engineering team. "These aren't just mining tools. With a few modifications, these could be the biggest railguns anyone's ever seen." Within hours, Han's team was welding metal plates and rewiring power systems. The ore processors that had been feeding Earth's factories were becoming weapons of war. Meanwhile, on Europa base, Commander Choi was converting the colony's habitat domes into something the aliens had never encountered before. The transparent domes that had protected colonists from Jupiter's radiation were being reinforced with metal plating and weapon ports. "We're not just hiding," Choi told her people. "We're turning our home into a fortress." Similar scenes played out across dozens of human settlements. On Ganymede, farmers converted their tractors into armored vehicles. On Titan, scientists turned their research laboratories into weapons factories. At Luna City, construction workers used their building equipment to create defensive barriers. The aliens expected to find helpless colonists running in panic. Instead, they found humans who had turned every tool into a weapon and every home into a battleground. When the first hegemony ships reached Ceres Station, they didn't find a helpless mining operation. They found humans who were ready to fight back with everything they had. The alarm bells on Titan Station had been ringing for 3 hours straight. Chief Engineer Yoon crawled through the maintenance shaft, sweat dripping from his forehead as he connected the last wire to the explosive device. Outside, he could hear the alien ships landing on the station's docking bays. "How many of them are there?" whispered Security Chief Bay through the communication system. Yoon peered through a small window and felt his heart sink. The landing bay was filled with alien soldiers. They were tall, wearing black armor, and carrying weapons that glowed with energy. He counted at least 50 in just one section. "Too many," Yoon replied. "But we're not going down without a fight." Titan Station had only 200 people. Most were miners, engineers, and scientists who had come to harvest methane from Saturn's largest moon. They weren't soldiers. They were ordinary people with families back on Earth. But when the alien invasion began, they had made a choice. They could have evacuated, they could have run. Instead, they stayed to buy Earth more time. Security Chief Bay had spent the last 2 days turning the station into a maze of traps. The maintenance tunnels that workers used to move around the station were now narrow death traps. Motion sensors triggered explosives. Hidden cameras let the defenders track enemy movements. "Remember," Bay spoke into his radio to all defenders, "we know this station better than they do. Use that advantage." The first wave of alien troops entered the main corridor confidently. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and never faced real resistance. These humans would be easy to crush. They were wrong. Chief Engineer Yoon had rigged the mining equipment throughout the station. When the aliens passed under a massive ore processor, he pressed a button. The machine exploded in a shower of metal and fire, taking out 20 enemy soldiers instantly. The fusion cutters that workers used to slice through ice and rock became deadly weapons in close combat. Maintenance worker Kim used one to cut through alien armor like it was paper. The industrial mechs that normally moved heavy equipment were converted into walking war machines, with welding torches and metal grinders attached as weapons. But Yoon's masterpiece was the smelting furnace in the station's center. When a large group of aliens entered the processing chamber, he triggered the system. Molten metal poured from the ceiling, creating a scene that would haunt alien nightmares for generations. Day after day, the small group of humans held their ground. They used every trick they could think of. When they ran out of ammunition, they used tools as weapons. When the tools broke, they used their bare hands. The aliens kept coming, wave after wave, but the humans refused to give up. Every corridor cost the invaders dozens of lives. Every room became a battlefield. On the 6th day, the aliens finally broke through the last defensive line. Only 12 humans were still alive, surrounded in the control room. Chief Engineer Yoon looked at his remaining teammates. They were beaten, exhausted, and out of ammunition, but they had accomplished something incredible. 800, he said quietly. We killed over 800 of them. The battle recordings were broadcast across the galaxy. Species that had surrendered without a fight watched in amazement as 200 humans held off 2,000 professional soldiers for 6 days. For the first time in galactic history, the invincible hegemony had bled. Dr. Ahn hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her eyes were bloodshot and her hands shook from too much coffee, but she couldn't stop working. On the table in front of her lay pieces of alien technology that had been recovered from the battle at Titan Station. "Pass me the scanner," she said to her assistant, Dr. Park. "I think I'm onto something." The underground laboratory beneath Seoul was buzzing with activity. Scientists, engineers, and computer programmers worked at dozens of stations, all trying to understand how the alien technology functioned. The wreckage from destroyed hegemony ships was like a treasure trove of advanced science. "Dr. Ahn," called out researcher Kim from across the room, "I've found something strange in this shield generator. The energy pattern keeps repeating every 2.7 seconds. Dr. Ahn rushed over, her excitement growing. "Show me the frequency analysis." For weeks, the team had been puzzled by the alien force fields that protected their ships. Human weapons seemed to bounce off them like raindrops. But now, staring at the data on Kim's screen, Dr. Ahn saw something the aliens had never expected anyone to discover. "It's not a continuous shield," she whispered. "It pulses. There's a tiny gap every few seconds where the field weakens." Her team gathered around the computer screen. The implications were staggering. If they could time their attacks perfectly, human weapons could penetrate the supposedly impenetrable alien defenses. Meanwhile, across the planet, General Nam was orchestrating the largest transformation in human history. Every car factory had stopped making vehicles and started producing military equipment. Every electronics company was building communication gear for the military. Even toy factories were making components for weapon systems. "We need 10,000 missiles by next month," General Nam told the factory managers during a video conference. "I don't care if you have to work 24 hours a day. The survival of our species depends on it." In Detroit, former car workers learned to build rocket engines. In Tokyo, electronics engineers designed targeting systems. In Mumbai, textile workers sewed parachutes for supply drops. The entire planet had become one massive weapons factory. But it wasn't just about building weapons. General Nam had also started the largest military training program in human history. Office workers learned to shoot rifles. Teachers practiced first aid. Even children were taught how to hide and help in emergency situations. "Every human being is now a potential soldier," General Nam announced in his daily briefing. "We're not just fighting for our governments or our countries. We're fighting for our right to exist." Back in the laboratory, Dr. Ahn's breakthrough was about to change everything. She had figured out how to build missiles that could punch through alien shields. The first prototype was ready for testing. "They think we're primitive," Dr. Ahn told her exhausted team as they watched the test missile successfully penetrate a captured alien shield generator. "They think we're just clever animals with simple tools. Let's show them what human ingenuity can really accomplish." Within 3 months, factories across Earth were producing thousands of shield-piercing missiles. The weapons that had once made the hegemony invincible would no longer protect them. The war was about to change in ways the aliens never saw coming. Captain Seo's hands gripped the controls of his fighter as he watched the massive alien ship drift through the asteroid belt. The hegemony dreadnought was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could vaporize his tiny fighter in seconds. Its black hull reflected no light, making it look like a moving piece of the void itself. "Target acquired," whispered Lieutenant O through the communication system. "That thing is huge." SEO studied his tactical display. 11 other human fighters were scattered throughout the asteroid field, hidden behind chunks of rock and metal. Each pilot was a volunteer, who knew they probably wouldn't survive this mission. "Listen up, everyone," CO transmitted to his squadron. "That dreadnought has enough firepower to glass an entire planet. If we fight it head-on, we'll be space dust in 30 seconds. But it has one weakness. It's designed to fight other big ships, not small, fast targets." The alien ship moved slowly through the asteroids, its sensors scanning for threats. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years by building ships that were bigger and more powerful than anything their enemies could field. No species had ever challenged them with swarm tactics. Remember what we learned from the wolves, Seo continued. A single wolf can't bring down a mammoth, but a pack of wolves working together can bring down anything. Pilot Young, flying behind a large asteroid, checked her weapons systems. Captain, our missiles probably can't even scratch that armor. You're right, Seo admitted, but Dr. Arn's new shield-piercing warheads should get through their defenses. And if that doesn't work, we have other options. The plan was simple, but dangerous. The 12 fighters would attack from different directions simultaneously. The massive dreadnought couldn't target them all at once, and its heavy weapons were too slow to track small, agile fighters. Attack pattern Delta, Seo ordered. Go, go, go! The fighters burst from their hiding spots like angry hornets. They came from above, below, and from 6 different sides, their engines screaming as they accelerated toward the giant ship. The dreadnought's defensive systems came alive immediately. Energy beams lanced out, destroying 2 fighters instantly, but the remaining 10 ships were already too close, weaving between the slow-moving defensive fire. "Missiles away!" shouted Lieutenant Park as he released his weapons. The shield-piercing missiles struck the dreadnought's hull in a coordinated barrage. Explosions bloomed across the alien ship's surface as the new human technology tore through their previously impenetrable defenses. But the massive ship was still alive, still dangerous. Its main weapons swiveled toward the human fighters. "It's not enough," Lieutenant O said over the radio. "The ship's too big, we barely scratched it." SEO watched as the dreadnought's primary weapon began charging. In seconds, it would fire a beam that could destroy planets. His squadron had done their best, but it wasn't going to be enough. That's when Lieutenant O made his decision. "For Earth," he transmitted simply. His fighter accelerated directly toward the dreadnought's bridge. The alien point defense systems tried to stop him, but he was too fast, too determined. His ship struck the command center in a brilliant explosion. Without its bridge crew, the massive dreadnought drifted helplessly until its reactor overloaded. The lesson spread quickly across human space. Bigger wasn't always better. Sometimes the pack could bring down the giant. Ambassador Ryu sat in the hidden meeting chamber deep beneath the surface of Kepler 442b, looking at faces she had never expected to see together. Around the circular table sat representatives from 12 different alien species, beings who had been enslaved by the hegemony for centuries. The Zephyrian delegate, a tall bird-like creature with brilliant blue feathers, spoke first. "We watched your battle recordings from Titan Station. 200 humans held off 2,000 hegemony soldiers for 6 days. His voice carried a mixture of amazement and hope. "We have been slaves for 300 years. We had forgotten that resistance was possible." Ryu studied each face around the table. These weren't just alien species. They were entire civilizations that had been crushed under hegemony rule. Their planets stripped of resources, their people forced into labor camps, their cultures nearly destroyed. 3 weeks ago, the Zephyrian continued, my people struck back for the first time in generations. We sabotaged the shipyards at Vega Prime Centauri Station and New Rigel. 37 hegemony warships were destroyed before they could launch. A murmur of excitement went around the table. The reptilian Kalos representative hissed softly, which Ryu had learned was their way of showing approval. "How?" asked the insectoid delegate from the Nixari worlds. "Our people tried rebellion 50 years ago. The hegemony destroyed our entire home moon as punishment." The Zephyrian's feathers ruffled with pride. "We learned from watching the humans. They showed us that you don't need massive armies to hurt the hegemony. Small groups, working in secret, can do tremendous damage. Our maintenance workers had access to the shipyards. We simply used that access." Ambassador Ryu leaned forward. She had been a diplomat before the war, but these negotiations were unlike anything in her training. She wasn't representing just Earth anymore. She was speaking for everyone who refused to kneel. "I want to be completely honest with all of you," Ryu said. "We can't promise you victory. The hegemony is still incredibly powerful. They have weapons that can destroy entire star systems, but we can promise you something else. You won't fight alone anymore." The Kalos delegate, a massive lizard-like being with scarred hide, spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. "For 2 centuries, my people have been forced to mine crystals for hegemony weapons. Last month we stopped all tribute shipments. Our crystal mines are now producing materials for human weapons instead. Around the table, other species began sharing their own acts of rebellion. The gas-breathing Methani had poisoned the atmosphere processes on 3 hegemony worlds. The aquatic hydras had destroyed underwater mining operations. The plant-like. Arbri had used their control of agricultural worlds to contaminate food supplies heading to hegemony military bases. But the biggest surprise came from the Nexari delegate. 2 days ago, the entire 4th Fleet of the Nexari Defense Corps defected, the insectoid announced. 47 warships, complete with crews and weapons, have joined the Human Alliance. They are currently heading toward Earth to offer their services. The room fell silent. Even Ambassador Ryu was shocked. The Nexari had been among the hegemony's most trusted subject species, used as enforcers to keep other worlds in line. Why? Ryu asked quietly. The Nexari's compound eyes glittered. Because you humans proved something we thought was impossible. You showed us that the hegemony can be beaten. Our military officers watched your fighters destroy a dreadnought with nothing but courage and clever tactics. They decided they would rather die as free beings than live as slaves. What had started as Earth's desperate last stand was becoming something much larger. Across the galaxy, species that had been conquered and broken were remembering what it meant to be free. The hegemony had ruled through fear for 1,000 years. Now that fear was turning into anger, and anger was spreading like wildfire across 1,000 worlds, Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Defiance, staring at the tactical display that showed the most diverse fleet in galactic history. Human destroyers flew alongside Zephyrian fast attack craft. Nexari heavy cruisers moved in formation with Kalos mining vessels converted into warships. Even the peaceful Arbori had contributed their massive siege ships, now bristling, with weapons grown from their own living technology. "Admiral," reported Commander Park from the communications station, "all Allied fleets are in position. We have the Kepler system completely surrounded." Kim nodded, watching the red dots on his screen that represented the hegemony's regional command center. For 800 years, this system had been the heart of hegemony power in this part of the galaxy. It controlled the fates of over 50 conquered worlds and 3 billion enslaved beings. Today, that was going to change. "Open a channel to all ships," Kim ordered. The communication system crackled to life, connecting him to thousands of vessels and hundreds of thousands of beings from dozens of different species. Some were professional soldiers, others were miners, and farmers who had picked up weapons. All of them were united by one thing: they were tired of living as slaves. "This is Admiral Kim to all Allied forces," he began, his voice carrying across space to reach every ship in the fleet. 6 months ago, the hegemony thought they could force humanity to kneel. They were wrong. Today, we're going to prove that they can be beaten, not just by humans, but by anyone with the courage to stand up and fight. Through the observation window, Kim could see the massive hegemony fortress that dominated the center of the Kepler system. It was a space station the size of a small moon, protected by energy shields and surrounded by over 200 warships. The hegemony had never lost a regional command center in their 1,000-year history. "Remember," Kim continued, "we're not just fighting for victory today. We're fighting for 3 million beings trapped in slave camps on those planets below. We're fighting to prove that freedom is stronger than tyranny." The battle began at exactly 14 US Galactic Standard Time. The Allied fleet attacked from every direction simultaneously, using the swarm tactics that humans had perfected. Instead of the traditional formation battles that the hegemony expected, they faced hundreds of small, fast-moving groups that struck, like lightning, and disappeared before the heavy weapons could target them. Lieutenant Cho, piloting a human fighter, led a squadron of mixed-species craft through the asteroid field surrounding the fortress. "Zephyrian wing leader, can you jam their communications?" "Already on it," replied the bird-like pilot in accented English. "Their coordination is breaking down." The hegemony defenders fought desperately, but they had never faced anything like this coordinated rebellion. Their massive ships, designed to intimidate conquered populations, were clumsy against the fast-moving Allied forces. The breakthrough came when Captain Yoon's engineering team managed to overload one section of the fortress's shield generators. Suddenly there was a gap in the supposedly impenetrable defenses. "All ships concentrate fire on Sector 7, Kim ordered. What followed was 18 hours of the most intense space combat in galactic history. Ships were destroyed, heroes were born, and slowly but surely the Allied forces carved their way through the hegemony's defenses. When the fortress finally surrendered, the liberation of the slave camps began immediately. 3 million beings, Zephyrians, Kalos, Nexari, and dozens of other species, walked free for the first time in generations. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The hegemony's regional command had fallen. Their myth of invincibility was shattered. For the first time in 1,000 years, hope was stronger than fear. The sky above Hegemon Prime burned red as the Allied fleet's bombardment continued for the 100th straight day. Colonel Park crouched behind the rubble of what had once been the galaxy's most beautiful city, watching smoke rise from 1,000 fires. The hegemony's capital world was dying, and he was leading the final assault. "Colonel," whispered Sergeant Kang, crawling up beside him with dirt and alien blood covering his uniform. "The Zephyrian commandos have breached the eastern wall. The Nexari shock troops are moving through the underground tunnels. We're ready for the final push." Park looked at his mixed unit of soldiers. Human Marines fought alongside bird-like Zephyrian, warriors and insectoid Nexari commandos. 6 months ago, these species had been enemies or strangers. Now they were brothers in arms, united by their hatred of the hegemony. The siege had lasted 4 months. 4 months of brutal street fighting through a city that had been built to showcase the hegemony's power. Every building was a fortress. Every street was a killing ground. The alien rulers had filled their capital with automated defenses, loyal guards, and weapons that could level city blocks. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had never imagined that their slaves would ever reach this far. "Privately," Park called to his radio operator, "patch me through to all Allied units." The young soldier's hands shook as he adjusted the communication equipment. At 19 years old, Lee had never expected to be part of the most important battle in galactic history. "All units, this is Colonel Park," he spoke into the radio. "We can see the High Archon's palace from here. One more push, and we end this war. Remember why we're fighting. Remember every world they enslaved, every species they destroyed, every child they stole from their parents." The High Archon's palace rose before them like a mountain of black stone and twisted metal. For 1,000 years it had been the center of galactic tyranny. From this building, orders had gone out to conquer worlds, enslave populations, and crush anyone who dared to resist. The assault began at dawn. Human Marines used their new shield-piercing weapons to blast through the palace gates. Zephyrian commandos used their natural flying ability to attack from above. Nexari shock troops tunneled underneath the building's foundations. The fighting was savage. The hegemony's elite guards fought with the desperation of beings who knew their empire was ending. Energy weapons lit up the palace corridors like deadly fireworks. Ancient tapestries and priceless artwork burned as the battle raged through chambers that had been built to last forever. "The shields are failing," shouted Lieutenant Kim over the sound of explosions. "The planetary defense grid is shutting down." "Correct." And his team fought their way up the palace's central tower, step by bloody step. Each floor was defended by fanatic guards who preferred death to surrender. But nothing could stop the combined fury of a galaxy's worth of freed slaves. At the top of the palace spire, Park found the High Archon's throne room. The alien dictator was gone. Fled or dead, it didn't matter. What mattered was the symbol. "Sergeant Kang," Park called to his most trusted soldier, "do the honors." Kang pulled out a simple flag, blue and white with a small earth in the center. It wasn't fancy, but it represented something the hegemony had never understood: the refusal to surrender. As Kang planted the human flag on the highest point of the palace, the news spread across the galaxy at light speed. The hegemony's 1,000-year reign was over. The slaves were free. In the burning streets below, beings from 100 different worlds celebrated together. The age of tyranny had ended, and the age of freedom had begun. Admiral Kim walked slowly through the memorial garden on New Geneva, his footsteps echoing softly on the crystal pathways. The garden stretched for miles, filled with monuments carved from stone brought from every world in the galaxy. Each monument bore thousands of names, beings who had died fighting for freedom. He stopped at the human memorial first, running his fingers along the smooth black stone. The names seemed endless. Lieutenant O, who had rammed his fighter into the enemy dreadnought, Chief Engineer Yoon, who died defending Titan Station, Sergeant Major Han, killed in the final assault on Hegemon Prime. 20 billion beings had given their lives to end the hegemony's reign of terror. "They would be proud to see this day," said a familiar voice behind him. Kim turned to see President Lim approaching, flanked by her security detail. The leader of Earth looked older than her 50 years, her hair now completely grey from the stress of leading humanity through its darkest hour. "Yes, they would," Kim agreed, looking back at the memorial. "But the cost was so high. Sometimes, I wonder if we could have found another way." President Lim joined him at the monument. "There was no other way, Admiral. The hegemony gave us a choice, kneel or die. We chose to stand, and the galaxy stood with us." Around them, representatives from dozens of species moved through the garden, paying respects to their own fallen heroes. Zephyrian leaders left crystal flowers at their memorial. Nexari commanders clicked softly in their language of mourning. Kalos warriors stood in silent tribute to their dead. "The signing ceremony begins in an hour," President Lim said softly. "Are you ready?" Kim nodded, though he felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Today, 47 species would sign the Galactic Confederation Charter, creating a new form of government based on cooperation instead of conquest. It was the largest peacetime alliance in galactic history. They walked together toward the Assembly Hall, a massive structure built specifically for this historic moment. Inside, delegates from across the known galaxy were taking their seats. The diversity was breathtaking. Beings of every shape, size, and color imaginable, all united by their shared struggle for freedom. President Lim took her place at the central podium with Admiral Kim standing beside her. The hall fell silent as she began to speak. 2 years ago, the hegemony demanded that humanity kneel. Today we sign a charter that proves we chose correctly when we refused. Her voice carried clearly through the hall's translation systems. But this is not about human victory. This is about galactic freedom. She lifted the charter, a document written in 47 different languages and scripts. The Galactic Confederation offers something the hegemony never understood. Partnership, not domination. Cooperation, not conquest. Respect, not fear. One by one, the representatives signed the charter. The Zephyrian delegate signed with a feather, dipped in liquid crystal. The Nexari representative used biological ink secreted from their own body. The Kalos leader carved their signature directly into the metal with their claws. When President Lim added her signature last, the hall erupted in celebration. 47 different species cheered in 47 different ways, but the meaning was universal. Freedom had won. Later that evening, as the celebrations continued across New Geneva, Admiral Kim stood on his balcony looking up at the stars. Ships from every corner of the galaxy filled the night sky, their lights twinkling like new constellations. The hegemony had been wrong about humans. They had seen a primitive species with simple technology and assumed they would be easy to conquer. They had never understood that humans possessed something more valuable than advanced weapons or powerful ships. They possessed the absolute refusal to surrender their dignity, no matter the cost. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly how it should be.